Now back here in the Northland, as the race for Minnesota governor heats up, several gubernatorial candidates made stops in Duluth as part of their campaign tour across the state.
And Northern News Now's Hannah Morgan joins us live in studio with candidates that visited the Northland. Hannah, you attended a press conference yesterday.
Yeah, I did. Good morning, Madison. So I was at a press conference at Monaco Air Duluth on Tuesday morning with the current Minnesota House Speaker Lisa Demuth, who outlined her priorities and announced her running mate. And running on her ticket is Ryan Wilson, an attorney from Minnesota. It marked the first major contender to announce a lieutenant governor pick. Demuth says her years in legislature have prepared her for the state's top job.
I've proven I can work across party lines while still delivering those conservative values and the things that Minnesota depends on the most.
And along with Duluth, the pair visited Moorhead, Mankato, and Paynesville on Tuesday. And also making a stop in Duluth on her campaign tour for Minnesota Governor is State Representative Kristen Robbins. So Robbins currently serves District 37A that represents the Maple Grove and Plymouth area. She also acts as the chair of the Minnesota's House Fraud Prevention Committee, the only Republican-led committee in the legislature right now. Yesterday, we sat down with her to see how her experience in fraud prevention can set her apart from other candidates.
I've seen firsthand the scale of the fraud. It's more broad and deep than I think most people know. Despite passing good fraud control measures and bills at the legislature, until we get control of the governor's office inside the executive branch, we're not really going to be able to stop it.
Robbins feels that Governor Tim Walz's administration has done a poor job of rooting out fraud and hopes to make it a cornerstone of her own campaign. And she now joins a growing list of Republican candidates, and a few big names are former candidate Scott Jensen and Republican hopefuls Kendall Qualls and Philip Parrish. And the Republican candidates will go up against Democratic Governor Tim Walz, who was running for a third term. Reporting live in studio, I'm Hannah Morgan, Northern News Now.